Therefore, this is look at this today's space as something which where we are learning both from each other, and it's a two-way street. And with that, I am handing over to Sarah.
Thanks, Akshay, for that reflection. And yeah, I just wanted to say that we decided that okay, what should be our little huddle for the end of the year, and we thought that it's a good idea to bring everyone together, just to exchange thoughts, reflections, that sort of thing, and also just to take a second, to take a moment to just understand what has been going on. And while the previous speakers did say that okay, this has, I mean, I think I speak for everyone when I say that this has been quite a year, um like I think for everyone, but especially the Levant. And also want to underscore that these things did not start 365 days ago. They have been going on. So in that sense, we Palestine has borne the brunt of educating the whole world. And I guess this was supposed to be the year when it actually like just broke out. Um, and yeah, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to set a few intentions for the next year, what we want to do as a circle, or what we should be doing, sort of crowdsourcing ideas on what see
Sorry.
more of from us. Yeah.
All
Sorry.
good. The
Oh,
mic is just
oh,
off.
okay. Yeah, and yeah, so we want to talk about what has happened, what's transpired, events, incidents that really stood out for us this year, and from there we're going to sort of have a collective, discussion to reflect, and then we'll come back again to, talk about these things and decide our next steps. So yeah, I'm about to get into a ramble, so I'm going to give it to Ayana.
Thank you, Sara. So the theme of this chat is that we're coming together to take a collective breath and really reflect on the year. So I wanted to kind of bring us into just a 1 to 2 minute grounding exercise and practice to really take a collective breath together. So if I can invite you just for a moment to get comfortable. And if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes. If not, it's totally fine, especially if you're driving. Please don't close your eyes and listening to this while you're moving. So yeah, we'll just take a moment to really arrive to the space, to be together in cohesion and harmony. And at the count of 3, we'll take a deep inhale. So 1, 2, 3, just inhale. And for a moment, pause. And then collectively we exhale together for 1, 2, and 3. And again, just going inward and connecting to our heart center and taking a deep breath, expanding our hearts together and connecting our hearts in this container. And so we take a deep breath, 1, 2, 3, and hold, and collectively exhale for 1, 2, and 3. And lastly, wherever if your feet are touching the earth or the ground, or your bum is touching the seat, just taking a moment to root yourself. And again, we breathe for this collective rooting. We inhale 1, 2, and 3. We hold, and we exhale 1, 2, and 3. And taking one last breath and exhaling and opening our eyes as we come together to reflect and be together in this time. Thank you. From here, Sara can set our stage for the conversation to have, and I'm looking forward.
Right. Thank you for taking that moment, even if you're not of the yoga and breathing persuasion. And thanks, Aya, for leading that. Oh my God, my queen has just joined this chat, Emilia, and I am now going to go into a freak out. um, okay, hi Amelia. So yeah, I wanted to essentially we're all going to be sharing what really stood out to us this year, and I think that a lot of us have been in the degrowth sphere for at least a year, if not more, in this call. And I think what really stood out to me was that we cover a smattering of all kinds of issues and intersections when it comes to studying degrowth or discussing degrowth, no matter what angle we come at it from. But for me, I think the biggest red line and the glaring sign was that degrowth and geopolitics is not discussed that much. It's not even talked about. Degrowth and international relations is not something that is hit on a lot, and it's not that touched upon by pretty much most people. And the internationalism that we talk about is largely focused on policy making and not demilitarization, and none of it touches demilitarization. And I think that is such a huge piece of the pie, and of not just country wise, but also in terms of just the way money is circulated. And I think we need to talk more about that. So that's my take on that. Akshay, do you want to share?
Sure. I mean, this has been also very, apart from Levant and genocide there, even for like rights of people in general, this has been horrible year. Like South Asia where I live, there is a gender apartheid in Afghanistan, Iran. This is ironically like the 30th year of Beijing Declaration, where collectively we got together in 90s and decided that okay, at least no state should beat up women. That at least that's the consensus we managed to get. But even those commitments seem to be failing globally, and a lot of times we as activists or advocacy development sector people, whatever identity we have, we think of this as system gone wrong, right? System gone not working for women, it's queer people, etc. But I feel like it's actually system gone right. Like this is what it was designed for genocide, for violating as many rights as possible, get surplus out of it, make profit, register that growth on your balance sheet, which is pumped by this unpaid labor of women, sacrifices of oppressed people, resources of earth, etc. And that sort of now is culminating into this, I feel, 30 years of women's rights, where and ironically this process is being headed by Saudi under United Nations. So yeah, as you said, the entire world has is backtracking on whatever little gains we had made in last couple of decades. What do you think, Aya? What, you were at COP recently, what was your impression?
I think, yeah, this is still fresh, our time from Baku. And this year it was supposed to be the climate finance year. And the countries were supposed to agree on a new quantum, a number, and even like discuss the quality aspects of the climate finance. And the global north countries did not give a number at all throughout the whole negotiations until the last very day. And the number that they gave was 250 billion, which in all honesty was, yeah, it was like very insulting to a lot of the countries. And then eventually they retracted that and it was 300 billion. And I think what was very clear is that the global north countries are ensuring that the current structures of oppression and that the global south and the global majority and indigenous people are constantly undermined. And this whole text, like many countries rejected it and even walked out of the room. And it truly undermines the whole multilateral process. And again, it showed us that we live in a system that prioritizes funding destruction, funding chaos and disaster rather than funding life. And exactly what Sarah mentions, like the elephant in the room is military. And you look at just the military expenditures, and then you have these years for us as to come in these rooms and discuss how much are we going to fund, and to agree on a loss and damage fund. And when you just look at the striking differences between numbers, like when you know just that only this year, I think the US pledged 12.5 billion to Israel in aid. And that happens like on a whim, Yet when you, for example, look at their loss and damage pledges, it's, I think, 17.5 million, which is just a joke. And again, it's reiterating that this is by design. And again, as the Global South countries, we need to come together and understand that we need to make new formations. We need to think about power needs to be met with power, and I think that's where like the delinking conversation really comes into perspective and light, and how we can unite and coordinate and realize that we have the strength is in our numbers, and that there is economic weight that the global majority holds, and we can start to leverage that, and that, I think, is now the, let's say, the silver lining from what happened to COP, is that how can we think about these new formations? So yeah, I'll stop here, and I see Emilia has raised her hand, and yes.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Sorry, my internet is really bad, so that's why it took me a long to connect. So I'm not going to be able to turn on my mic. I just wanted to follow up on what has been said already, and to say that I was negotiating on behalf of the Mexican delegation on the gender and climate change, and therefore I was also advising on the finance item in the COP. So I was there in the plenary when the document was approved. And that was a huge surprise, because we were calling for the G77 to reject the document and go to a technical procedure that is called Rule 16, in which they would reject the document and they would go for the next year in Brazil, so that the developing countries would expose precisely the ridiculous figure that developed countries had offered. And the entire document is really, really bad. It's not only the amount. So just for the amount is less with inflation figures is less that was given in Copenhagen, but it's also a huge amount in debt. It's going to go through mainly through international development banks and the IFIs, especially referring to language of the World Bank through the evolution roadmap. So everything is going to come with conditionality. So it's really, really, and it says it's going to be mega projects, no money for small projects, no direct access, no loss and damage. So it's really, really bad. But the worst part is not that. It's not that we won't have money for climate action in the next 10 years. The worst part is, there are two things. One is that the Brazil and South Africa came and dismantled the entire thing, that the alliance of the G77. It wasn't the developed countries. Brazil and South Africa were operating on behalf of the G20, and that is precisely another element that we need to consider, which is the Global South is very divided and is very much, not only the G77 was split before, with the islands being held under Israel, and the threat by the US on development cooperation, but definitely they managed to capture Brazil and South Africa. So that is one thing that I think people need to open their eyes and see what is the future of going to Brazil next year. And they say, oh, it's going to be a Global South, Latin American Cup. No, it's ridiculous. Literally, Brazil was shouting at the G77 negotiators to say that they were not going to take this negotiation further, and that they needed to accept the document in the terms that it was. Modi couldn't say anything because he was on a plane, so he couldn't take the call that he was receiving by the Prime Minister of the UK. So it had to be decided there, and mostly by the BRICS, and it was South Africa and Brazil the ones who decided the whole deal. So I think this is very important. I don't think that people has been discussing this openly, but the role of Brazil when they're saying next year is going to be better, no, really isn't. So what is it now that we are now planning to go to Brazil next year? What for? And the other thing is that the language of the document is really bad in the sense that it's literally murdering the convention. So they're literally saying that there is no commitment by developed countries in any sort, not only their financial responsibilities, but also their historical responsibilities as emitters. So they're trying to separate the Paris Agreement from the convention. And now with this document, they actually managed to do that. So I think this is a larger reflection that we need to make as a climate movement. But just to say that in the degrowth framing, we have a larger and more systemic analysis that goes also to analyze the planetary boundaries. So climate change is not the only threat. We have these other larger dimensions that about all of the elements that are intertwined. So I don't know if you heard about this discussion that happened in the ICJ in the past 2 weeks, in which precisely the developed countries were arguing first, no one will touch the Paris Agreement. This is the only document, so no other human rights instrument applies to the environmental integrity. Second, the Paris Agreement has no language on their historical responsibilities, on human rights, on them causing anything. And they said that the Paris Agreement is voluntary, and therefore there is no obligation in any sorts for any country whatsoever globally to address climate change. So that was an ongoing discussion that they had in the ICJ for 2 weeks. And of course, the developing countries were very strong in giving different arguments. And the judge, one of the judges at one point asked, well, then if the Paris Agreement is just voluntary, is just a procedural document, or is there anything that relates to outcome, like the processes that governments are doing in terms of their voluntary pledges? They have to come to some sort of outcome or what? So this is the debate that is going to happen. And so the ICJ resolution is going to be very important because it will address the entire mandate of environmental integrity as a whole UN system, and not only the UNFCCC, which has been very limited. But you know already that we lost the battles also in the CBD, in the biointegrity discussion also in Cali, precisely as well in the discussion on finance. And it was something similar in the desertification, sorry for my Spanish. But then the discussions are really, really bad. So I think that takes me again to what was said about the linking project that is really tackling more deeply how to gain autonomy and sovereignty in the global south. But at the same time, I think from the linking point of view, coming from a global north perspective, is really going into trade agreements. I think that the degrowth movement is not mapping that, is how is that they're imposing conditionalities and imposing all of these sanctions and unilateral coercive measures in many respects to precisely undermine the sovereignty of developing countries. And I haven't seen any work of degrowthers going into specific clauses of trade agreements and how that has to be dismantled, because again, well, the trade actually, the arms trade doesn't go through trade agreements. It goes through agreements that are made bilaterally, and so that is not also mapped. And so I think there are so many things that relate to consumption and the resource justice, etc., that needs to keep on being mapped, because I would agree with what Sarah was saying at the beginning, that the multilateral mapping is so scarce in the growth, and that is really where things are happening. Plus, internally, there is this fantasy of the growthers, so let's build a community, but it's an artificial community, whereas the real communities are facing the expansion of fascism and these what we call fundamentalisms in many respects. So there are also no reflections on how to deal with that. And I think this is a wake-up call for all of us, what happened also in the movement, celebrating the Loss and Damage Fund, but now we're seeing that it was just like a strategy or a bait so that we would go and not going deeply into the climate finance. And through climate finance, they literally murdered the convention. So I think there's a big assessment that we need to be making at this point. And for me, just in a very minor reflection, I see the call for the conference of degrowth, and I'm so disappointed again, isolating people as if they were just individuals, not panels, not teams, not collectives that were, let's bring a conversation, let's mobilize, let's do strategies, let's have different tracks of conversation analysis, etc., across the conference. So I think this space maybe can help us move forward to think how we can also disrupt that format and come up with something that is really collective and doesn't allow them to atomize the small efforts that we are trying to bring. Thank you.
That was Amelia there for straight 5 minutes. I actually personally do not mind if this session is completely taken over by Amelia. Gift that keeps giving. But yeah, I also just off of what Amelia was saying, I also wanted to talk about and bring to lights all the recent writings and sessions and podcasts that Fadel Kaboub has been engaged in recently. And I think they are an excellent reflection on what BRICS purports to be versus what is actually happening. And he's recently been writing and appearing on a lot of things and dailies where he's talking about how we can't like de-dollarize a system that hasn't been structurally decolonized yet, and that like no new multipolarity can be born without Africa and the rest of the global south being repositioned away from like the bottom of the global hierarchy, which is, as Aya and Amelia have like right now furnished, which is exactly what is happening, which is exactly the status quo right now. So I would be very keen to listen to any further thoughts on that. Also, this doesn't have to be just about this. So if anyone wants to just chime in with anything else that struck them, this. I know it doesn't look like it, but this cafe is very much about that.
Also, I think it would be really interesting if the new people around want to raise their hands, just so we know who is new here. And it would also be nice to get to hear from you on how you found this space. Yeah, please feel free to introduce yourselves if it's your first time here.
Okay, so I'm gonna pick my buddy Abhishek, who's logging in to speak.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Abhishek from Bombay, India. I'm a close friend of Sarah's, and that's how I got to know about this session. I work in the nature conservation sector, but over the past couple of years or so, mainly through my conversations with Sarah, I've come to understand how much the economics of the current global system is an integral part of the ecological catastrophe that the world is in today. And that has shifted my vision of nature conservation also away from what it typically is, and got me very interested in environmental economics, degrowth, and all of the related stuff. I'm not really into it yet, I would say, in the sense that I'm not doing any academic readings or anything of that sort on it. But yeah, a lot of conversations with Sarah, a lot of really nice podcasts, and those kind of things have introduced me to this space. This is the first time actually that I'm in a live chat room about this topic. And yeah, I hope to be in many more.
Thanks, Abhishek. Reena, then Nick, if you want to go next in that order.
Thank you, Sarah, and hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you. I am Reena, and I'm half Indian, half Finnish. I'm based currently in Barcelona. I'm just here because my partner lives here, and I found this group by accident. Actually, I joined the Barcelona Degrowth community, and I saw a message there, and I thought this is a wonderful opportunity because I'm working from distance now. But I'm doing my PhD on post-growth transitions, and I focus on technologies and innovations, and I have a case study. We're collaborating with indigenous communities in Ecuador. So I'm applying sort of pluralistic or pluriversal epistemologies with technologies and innovations and innovation policy and post-growth transition. So it's a combination of all of that. I'm very much interested. My background is in critical development studies and political ecology and political economy, sort of peace and conflict studies also. But currently I see myself more and more shifting into the sort of, pluriversal epistemologies, relocalizations or real, bioregions type of stuff in combinations with technology and innovation stuff. So I'm just finalizing a paper on summa causae and sufficiency organization. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so that's me. Very nice to meet you. I'm very happy to be in this group.
Yeah, thanks, Rena. I also joined the call because I'm part of the IDN, and Sara told me about it. So my name is Nick. I just finished my PhD in organizing for degrowth at Nova University in Lisbon. I'm originally from Australia. And now I'm currently doing my postdoc at Aarhus University in Denmark on the political economy of carbon dioxide removal technologies, which is moving away from degrowth. But yeah, and my PhD work was focused around like policies, power, and practice for degrowth. The practice element being that trying to analyze why the movement has moved away from anarchist kind of direct action social movements and towards kind of convincing people in power that degrowth is a good idea through, policy making and institutional settings, which I think waters down the transformative potential of the degrowth movement. Interesting that Emilia mentioned the conference actually. So along with one of my friends who is doing her PhD studies in critical whiteness in Germany, we will run a workshop on why critical whiteness is necessary for people to participate in direct action tactics, and why majority white-based social movements need to be more like reflexive and inward-looking when participating in direct action, and what can be the dangers if they don't do this. For example, adopting strategies of mass arrest, which may be obvious, which may be seem innocent for white people, but is very dangerous if you're a person of color. So interested to listen to the conversations and join this meeting on a regular basis, even though it's not part of my formal job. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Svein, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Perneet and Gisela.
Thank you very much. I suppose that's me, Svein Monne. Hello everyone. My name is Svein Monne. I am very humbled to be joining you in this meeting from Norway. Actually, I am one of the coordinators of Degrowth Norway, which was initiated actually in the end of 2022, a couple of years ago. And I am also a part of the organizing committee for the 18th Conference in Ecological Economics and 11th Conference of International Degrowth. So that is something we are working on quite heavily. I got the invitation to this meeting via the IDN, since we are a member of the IDN, and I have also joined a couple of the meetings in the Beyond Degrowth series that we have arranged. And I am joining this mostly to look into what kind of discussions you have. I think that's very interesting to learn from you. And of course, I think the most basic thing we should do probably is to cooperate more closely between the global north and the global south to understand how we could do the transformative changes together. Because I have been listening to some of you, and I of course understand the anger that many have, and but somehow I am also very curious about what are the actual narratives that we are telling, because when I listen to some of the debates, I also hear a lot of assumptions and probably myths as well that we put into our narratives when I'm not quite sure if we are all on the same platform when we communicate. So in that sense, I'm thinking that language is very important. And so when we are probably speaking English, which might be not our mother tongue, many of us, we have to translate from our own language into English to communicate. And then there might be some language barriers that could cause some misunderstandings and so forth. So I'm very curious about that. So, but mostly I'm here to learn from you and to listen to your discussions, if that's okay. And I'm very humble, of course, that I'm living in Norway. So thank you.
I think Parmeet was next.
Hi everyone. So I'm here. So Aya invited me to be part of the network. Aya and I met during COP28. I am a poet from India, and I run Poetry for Planet, which is an organization to decolonize the climate narrative through the power of poetry and storytelling. So all of this is new to me, and I'm very happy to be part of the discussions. But some of the things that you've been talking about are deeply relevant, even though I'm not academically associated. But what I am doing and my team is doing with poetry and storytelling, it's something that finds a resonance with what you're trying to do. And I also deeply echo with Swine's thoughts about the language that we use. So even in Poetry for Planet, we are trying to platform the leaders, the stories of these climate leaders in their native languages. So the fact that we need to even decolonize spaces that we take up, the spaces that we take up is so important. And I'm very excited and thrilled to be part of the network and to learn more and see how these interlinkages can be explored creatively and culturally as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Parmeet. Gisela, and then Juan.
Well, hello. I'm really happy to see some faces here that I know. I am not new to IDN, but I haven't been able to be in the meetings. I hope next year I can arrange my afternoon so I can be there. I'm in Barcelona, but I'm from Colombia. And I have been working on, I'm a psychologist, a discursive psychologist. I've been working in discourse analysis, and I'm more on the theoretical part and discourse and narratives. Right now, I'm like, I have been in the Beyond Growth conference in Vienna because I lived a long time in Vienna, and I'm really dismayed at what is happening, at the problems in Europe with the narrative we have about the role of the global South and the global North in what is happening in our different crises, and how the left is not being able to get their message across, and how the global South is losing visibility, and how difficult it's going to be to do things like talk about global injustices, because the message is not getting across. I think the left is in Europe has to change completely its discourse. I went to a Hickel a conference like a couple of months ago, and he was saying, yeah, the left has been doing a bourgeois discourse which is not getting across. It's not the fault of the people because they're taking a plane somewhere. It's the fault of the 1% or the 10%. So Right now, I'm engaged with that. For example, in Vienna, I saw in the Beyond Growth conference, I was really upset because all the discussions were about how can we keep up our welfare, our socialist welfare, our imperial way of life. How can we not get this destroyed? So the whole conference was about socialism, actually, forgetting that the problems we now have are global, that this global south is actually carrying the whole way of life of the north, and is quite, the north is quite responsible, and much more responsible, or completely responsible for the crisis we have. And this is not being addressed, even in a Beyond Growth conference. So that's what I'm trying to write about this right now. What I'm doing is I'm trying to write for normal media. I'm not in academy. So yeah, that's more or less what I'm working. And about the South, I think it's so important to not see the South as a block, because the development discourse, the growth discourse is very strong in countries like Latin America. Even in a country like Colombia, we have now a leftist president, but the mainstream discourse about growth is very, very strong. And I think when a minister comes and talks about degrowth and the whole country explodes, I think this is very positive. And I think this is a role that degrowth can play in the South, just to bring grietas, how do you say, into the hegemonic discourse, which is still very strong in some countries in the South, at least in Colombia. Okay, thank you.
I can go next if, yeah, I think
Yes, you are next. And then Akshay, and then Zoha.
Thanks. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Juan José de Blas. I am based in Germany, but I'm Spanish. I'm a very active member of the IDN membership and onboarding. I came late to the coffee, so don't know what it was discussed before, but I just wanted to say hello. I'm very happy and very proud or nice to see that there are so many people in this call. So I don't know, 27 or 30. So I think it's really, really great. So I'm part of the membership and onboarding team in the IDN. So I invite you all, if you are not part of IDN already, to join. So we are doing a lot also about networking, and we should do more to make it even a stronger movement. And also very nice to see, for example, Shamira, that just joined recently to the IDN, and I contacted her with some people, but she already made a lot of contacts, and it's great to see her already in this facilitating this event. So that's, you see, small actions and small results. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Akshay.
Yeah, I was just writing notes also about some action points, etc. But overall, I feel, especially with the international forums and whatever platforms you have discussed, last 1 year, let's just see, it has been not the best advertisement for international law in any capacity. We all know these conventions are just white supremacy of some form or the other. And I myself, I don't understand what is even a point of going there and coming disappointed again and again, when we all, lot of times we already know the outcome. Like lot of global south organizations, activists, we genuinely go to COP, we say what we want, but I don't think that transfer of wealth or that decolonization can happen through a non-violent and civilized conferences. And that's something we need to understand and take our positions accordingly, that decolonization is going to be an inherently violent project, and we need to now situate ourselves within that context. And that's what I think degrowth also needs to run, what Emilia was even saying. That brings me to bringing, like when I joined IDN network, my first question was to Aya or someone, was that what is IDN's position on Palestine? And I don't think we have any position on Palestine. And And it's not just about Palestine. When you don't articulate your positions, someone else will articulate it for you, and that's how your movement get co-opted. And that's what will happen eventually with degrowth if we are not articulate enough on imperialism, on genocides, on colonization, wealth transfer, role of violence in the movements, etc., etc. And I think we need to be more articulate and ensure that we are not contradicting movements and labor done by our ancestors before us and those who will come after us as well in that. And so that we need to, this is the chance for, I think, for us in 2025 to ensure we give it that ideological orientation as global South people, because otherwise there are so many imperialist universities in the core. New York University, a lot of you are also working in some of the global North universities. They will produce these PhDs and create something so far remote and removed from our realities, and that's what happens with every movement. Like a lot of the IDN people are PhDs, so I think it's a good platform for me to articulate that. And I am offering one solution about the communication part. I'm trying to create a small ad film about IDN, and if anyone wants to be part of it, to translate it, to script it, to provide free video editing support, etc., like we can do that. But that's not it. Like I'm just trying to point out the larger problem, and I think we as degrowthers need to be more articulate about everyday challenges of the world and put our positions. Even if it's a wrong position, it's fine. We should be open to that feedback and course correct ourselves as a movement than just not saying anything at all. Because every time, like Aya and I have to talk about Palestine on this platform through our individual capacities, because IDN doesn't have any position on it. So maybe next time let's ensure that we don't have to do that. Though we don't have to hide behind the individuality, and organizationally we know we define genocide and Zionism and all other forms of oppressions. Yeah, that's it from me.
That was the yeah. Zoha, do you want to go?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Zoha. I'm connecting from India. I'm a recent graduate in environmental science with a focus on conservation practice. And during this program, I was introduced to the subject called environmental economics. And I'm utterly surprised that nowhere in the literature was degrowth mentioned. And as I have interacted with my peers and other people, it's treated blasphemous to just utter this word. For some reason, it's widely misunderstood. So I'm just glad that this network exists. And I got to know about this meeting through LinkedIn, and very happy to be here. And I've been hearing what everyone has been saying on this call. And I would just want to challenge the binary that it's just the global north that is complicit in the overall mayhem and chaos that we are seeing manifest in 2024. We have active collaborators in the global south as well. For instance, India, which is I think right now is the most populous country in the world, and it is perpetuating the current world order when it says that it stands with Israel and the genocide axis, if I may call it that. And with respect to other things as well, India has been creating a lot of problems when it comes to BRICS too. And then we have our neighbor Pakistan, which is basically a vassal state of United States. So yeah, I think we need to also avoid generalizations and understand where these different actors in global south stand as well. So yeah, that's from my side.
Okay, so we have Angela, then Zamira, and then Emilia.
Yeah, hello, my name is Angela. I have been in the Masters of Degrowth, finishing it now or somehow. But my background is very different. It's in sciences, in physics. And I'm trying basically to pay attention what people say in general to understand what is relevant. And yes, this critique that or criticism that Sarah brought on geopolitics, I also had heard it on the Emilia side of Emilia, and yeah, it's like a conversation that brings it breaks degrowth as degrowth. I don't know what degrowth is actually as a science, as a movement. It looks like something that means different things for different people, which it's worrying in the sense that one doesn't understand exactly from the community or from the building of knowledge together what is important to do. I think if this is the platform to create a new field, like, or a new side of the field, then it's urgent actually to do it. To kind of, I don't know if this is institutionalizing it or making it part of academia and teach it, or start connecting people really hands-on the work and hands-on just filling the gap. I don't know if this is something that IDN can do. And I think this is also connected to what Akshay says. For me, it's very obvious that the stances of people in degrowth can be completely different. I have experienced it myself with other circles, other IDN circles, where people can be completely in the opposite or very much in the neutral positioning, which is kind of the opposite positioning regarding to Palestine, when you just don't understand Palestine as a colonizing problem, or actually literally. So what is actually the name degrowth suggesting when it brings us under a IDN? That will be a question. What do we, how are we feeling this space? Yeah, it's I have not been here, but of course I feel that there is a lot of coherence and consistency within the South group, the Global South group, because I know a lot of people here, and I hear continuously what they say, and they almost agree in many things. But it looks like it's actually not exactly degrowth. It's something else. It's something more complex. And what is degrowth meaning here? I don't know. I wonder if it is needed, degrowth is needed as a whole, or this just brought us together to discuss something that is broader, or something that we have to make ourselves, that we have to start like really making it.
Yeah, Zamira and then Amelia.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Angela, for those questions that I feel like can make resonance on the room. I feel like if we were to see what's the elephant in our room, it would be that degrowth is a word that can take many angles and can get really complex in a conversation. But overall, like in the last meeting that I was able to finally attend here, I think that degrowth, what can look like in 2025, and I feel especially attracted to like give a little bit of a fist bump to everyone out there that is like wondering, oh, I'm not so much about the academia and all of this complexity of language and all of that. Just remember that the IDN is composed by individuals mainly, and therefore we all can come with our own knowledge. I don't come from the academia. I didn't do a PhD. I'm just a single mom that is really concerned for the world that I'm giving to my child. And I come from South America. I've seen the collapse of the Amazonian rainforest by the illegal mining of gold that is going into the luxury industry. So there's like, it's more than enough for you to be a human being, to know that degrowth is a path that we can all take. And in the last conversation that we had, like my first thing was like, okay, there's a lot of complexities on the conversations around the language or the symbolism that we can give to the degrowth. But at the end of the day, what we really want to push this to be is a movement of change, which takes action, and it takes action in all different realms. We have people from the academia working really hard to get into conversations that are very complex and therefore sometimes very exclusive as well. But we're also needing to put a step forward on taking action with our communities, with our own territories and our people, so we can sustain the conversation further than just the words and push it into the actions that need to take place in our different communities. So thank you, and welcome to everyone here that is not coming from the academia. It only takes to have a human heart. Thank you for being here.
Amelia?
Yes, thank you for this conversation. Just want to follow up on what Angela said about having a deeper questioning on what is it that brings us together. And we had many interpretations of what degrowth means. To me, degrowth needs to be applied for the global north, concentration of wealth and harmful sectors. And that applies into some spaces for the global south, but not thoroughly. I very much envision a post-extractive future for the global south. And that doesn't mean that is the same path that the global north needs to transit. And this is why I think starting from those questions that Angela was posing is again the issue of what is the global south. And I very much vindicate the notion of global south, because the global south, we have all of the data about all of everything that has been extracted and plundered, and all of the genocides that our territories are suffered for another type of territories that are in the global north that have been carrying out an imperial project. So it is not about saying that everybody is the same, because even in the global north, we have different types of empires and we have different dynamics. But when we say global south, it is very clear that there is a global south to me. And I have so many statistics, but that is not the point. But the issue of having an IDN space for global south people to discuss, I think these are the type of questions that we need to build. And I would agree with Angela that this is the group that brings more complexity into the framing, and even has the capacity to question the right-wing nature of many of the colleagues that are in the degrowth movement, that are very much capturing the space and evading this type of positioning that actually was also mentioning, and many others here, about imperialism, and very much at the heart the nature of the genocidal nature of what is happening in Palestine and Lebanon, and expanding into many territories now. So I think this is not a technical conversation of definition. This is very much a political conversation, and that this group needs to have. And from that, I think we would be in the capacity also to have a different type of engagement with the larger community of degrowth and different spaces, starting with the IDN as a whole, but also the different spaces in which the growthers meet. And I would hope as well to start questioning the different types of silos that many movements are having, because what I'm convinced is that degrowth is bringing this structural question that is systemic in nature to the rest of the world about the economic system, in very pointed and very sharp ways. And so it's not useless for the global south, but I very much think that we cannot just say just the degrowth discourse is very much to be applied for the global south. I think we are in a very different realm. And the global south, despite of everything, we do have movements unlike in the global north. So there are many realities that can say that we have a lot to say from this group to even enlighten the conversation in the broader community. And but so far it's actually being felt the opposite, like this is a minority, that this is an unheard community, that our voices are being heard as we were cases, are just talking about our small particularities and not as a lived realities, because we're not white, we're not global north, etc. So I think that all of these elements need to be taken into consideration, and I'm very glad that we have this space to keep on furthering ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. I agree with everything you said, and there's like a lot of points and themes that are coming out of this. I think one thing very glaringly that comes out is that we definitely need to be talking more about multipolarity, politics in general, but also geopolitics specifically when it comes to the degrowth, layer of things. And the other thing is that it is really a travesty that it's a very young field, but we already have to have conversations about decolonization, and also that there is no there like, I don't know how to put this, but there are no guarantees. Even with Marxism, for example, there's a glowing example in Austria, for example, that their Communist Party criminalized BDS this year in Austria. So that's like a glowing example that even, it needs to be decolonial Marxism, if at all. And then beyond that, then there's the larger question of, is it, is decolonization enough? But I mean, my take on that would be that we have to be actively anti-colonial and not just decolonial. But some would argue that that's one and the same thing. Do we have any other contributions? And payback, yes, of course, it is always land back, and the little DEI contributions that people have is not decolonization. I think a great, again, I am cringing at what I'm about to say, but there's a great paper on this. I hate that I'm quoting academics again, but like Tuck and Yang's Decolonization is Not a Metaphor is a great start to understand what you just said, Zamira. Yeah, we have a hand. Angela, yes.
Yes, I'm always puzzled, and that may be the same thing that we tried to kind of articulate before. But I'm very puzzled because there are people like me, for instance. I'm coming from a very different background, and many people are like this in Degrowth as well, that come from actually backgrounds that are completely off economics or social sciences, and I see that with time we are getting used to the conversations and getting more into the topics, and it's possible to actually merge ways of working and merge strategies, maybe of at least I think it like this in my case, in particular case, where when I want to change my career, I want to do something else, or at least to merge it with completely something else in order to fix things in the world. And we are very used, that's our position, on learning by the usual type of learning, lectures, or hearing people continuously taking notes, doing things. So, for example, Emilia, you mentioned at the very beginning all what happens in the climate space. And all that you mentioned is like a bunch of things I will love to learn, like how, and then I understand one learns by doing in many of these cases. But I wonder if there is a way to envision, maybe this is for later, maybe this is after collective conversations and much more time. How can one, for example, you started this, Emilia, with the engagement, the group of engagement in international arenas. We have the videos. You started giving us the points of entry, how to access a concrete, right now, activity that one can do at the United Nations level in different topics. I wonder if this is actually explicit for everyone. These type of things can be made explicit, because it's not only about just talking. I mean, we can, of course, we need the conversation and the talking, but I feel that sometimes we need just really concrete action. And some of us, I maybe most of the people know, but in my case, for instance, it's just like a little bit of a cloud, like how do I jump, where do I jump? And of course it's a matter of time and many things together, but I wonder if this can be kind of a structure more. I think the starting, what Emilia started, has already a lot of information that one can recheck and try to think in this direction. But what you mentioned, Emilia, group, and I don't know, what are the methods that G70 and G20 use, I mean, one over the other? How do you lie in these spaces? So as a matter of learning a way in which actually things function. So where is this, or is this only practice? Because if we don't for me, if we don't disentangle this structure, like understand, okay, this is the game, how is it being played? How, I mean, I have a hard time thinking how I'm going to enter to combat this if I'm not understanding how the game is actually being played? For me, it was totally surprising what you said that happened in Cali and happened in actually all these spaces. I'm like dismayed because it's like a repetition of what we see everywhere. Like here I'm in Germany, I see how the government just doesn't follow the constitution of Germany. And I just discovered it recently, like 1 week ago, like, okay, there are academics saying that the government of Germany doesn't follow the constitution. That's why they support genocide. That's why they do what they do. So I have to start really putting that in my head. Okay, there is a law, no, and the government cannot follow the law. So how can we craft these kind of things? It's a regional thing within the South. For example, people that live in the North that has strong relations with the South. Should we make a group or talk about this stuff? People that are in contact with UN, United Nations, can we learn? What are the opportunities there much more systematically? People that come from for example, a completely different background like me, can we learn? Can I be employed immediately doing something that actually has incidence? I mean, this is a little bit, for me, cloudy. Like, how can one do this? And if this IDN Global South can actually, in the same conversation, kind of help to structure this. I don't know. Sorry if I'm ranting too much. I just having too many questions.
No, I don't think this is a rant at all. I think this is exactly what we're here for. So it's most welcome. And if someone does have a rant as well, that's welcome too. Yeah, Swine and then Akshay.
Thank you very much. I'm not quite sure where to start actually, but because there are lots of interesting questions and they are important as well. I just wanted to share some thoughts with you from my own experience. I have actually been working 13 years within the financial business from 96 to 2009 before I did a totally personal adjustment. And I really got a new understanding of the reality and so forth. So I just wanted to say to you that I think we should have a transdisciplinary view at this and not talk about the global South and the global North. And I feel that I might disagree a bit with Emilia Reyes in your understanding, Emilia, when you define degrowth, because in my understanding, well, let me just give you you're totally right in your view that you explained. If you by degrowth in the North, you mean that we should reduce our consumption and production, and in that sense use less energy and materials in the global North. I follow you and I agree with you. However, my view on degrowth is that degrowth is just a slogan, right? So to get in grip with the growth ideology and the capitalism, and that is important to talk about the capitalism. And so in my view, degrowth is actually a radically different way of organizing our societies. So that could also be legitimate to the global South, because that could mean that we would have good lives for everyone, also in the global South, by organizing our societies based on degrowth principles. So that is important to say. So what I wanted to say that when we're talking about different constitutions, we also have to take into our minds that most constitutions that we abide by today are formed exactly to create growth. They are growth dependent because of the imperative of growth within the capitalism. So we need to discuss the growth ideology and the capitalism within the degrowth movement. I think the degrowth movement is about that. And in that sense, if you look at the United Nations, the constitution of the United Nations is interconnected with also the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organizations, and so forth. So you have to look at this. So if you should be able to create transformative changes within the United Nations, we actually would have to change the constitution of the United Nations, and then in that sense, we also need to understand the difference between green growth and degrowth, because the Constitution in the United Nations today is based on green growth, and that solves nothing in the global north with the imperialism, the colonialism, and so forth. So those are just some of my thoughts based on what I'm hearing, and so I really would urge us all in the degrowth movement, and also in the international degrowth network, and hopefully also in the Global South Circle, to cooperate with us in the Global North, to say, well, I shouldn't say Global North, because should say to you also that you will find degrowth societies in Norway and other Nordic countries, and in the Global North, some of the other countries as well. But you can't see that because of the capitalism and the growth ideology, which is really destroying our societies, and of course the biological diversity and the climate and everything. And I just should mention to you that next week, no, just after the turning of the new year, I have invited both Degrowth Norway and Postgrowth Nordics to listen to Arve Benjaminsen, who will give a presentation on climate security and climate justice in this perspective, using Sahel in Africa as a case to see how this is exploited by the capitalists. And this is not just happening in the global north. You have to understand that. So I just wanted to say that. Maybe I provoked some of you, but please, I hope we could do this transdisciplinary.
Okay, does anyone want to respond to that? Amelia, okay. And then Akshay.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that we have different pathways, and the Global North even movement, even those who want to transform the system, they need to understand that the amount of injustices that have been done to the Global South, even now, through the unequal exchange. So we cannot say point blank that we are headed in the same direction, precisely because our ecosystems, our nature, and our people, the lives of our people, are used as commodities for the survival of the global north. So we refuse to be told that we have the same path ahead, that we have the same methodologies, that we have the same views, and that we have even the same futures ahead of us. Because the Global South also wants to have an autonomous, self-sufficient, and sovereign destiny that is totally detached from the system, from the Global North. So whatever system of the Global North needs to transit out because of their imposure of their system and the ways of lives is not even in our minds. The type of lives that we imagine for the Global South is totally different from what the Global North can imagine, precisely because of the structures. And so, on the other hand, what we need is to have the Global North movements to realize that their well-being has been dependent on the genocide and the ecocide of our territories and our people. So this is what, when Sarah, actually Angela, Gisela, so everybody has been saying, is precisely this. This is the need, why we need this group from the Global South to say that we don't have the same pathways because we come from different realities. So history is now, and the future that we want is a sovereign future. So it's just to understand that very much we want to support the degrowth movement in the North because it is harming and murdering and killing the South. That is why it's so urgent. That is why we need Northern people to mobilize. And yes, to even help the way to transform the UN, because the UN has been captured by your leaders, not ours, but your leaders. So this is why you also have to engage in the UN, because that is the only multilateral system that we have. And the challenges that the humanity has are global. They cannot be solved just by one region, one country. It has to be global, and this is why we need to reclaim back the UN. But it's not our decision makers that have been captured by these imperialist logics. It's your decision makers. Norway has been drilling the Arctic And there is no way to stop. And Norway has been ignoring the ruling of the international treaties on human rights for the women of the Global South and youth of the Global South, because Norway maintains drilling in the Global North. So we know that there are movements in the Global North that are trying to move that, but to us from the Global South, what we're saying is that the Global North movement needs to step up in their actions, precisely not to stay in this community fantasy, and that you're gonna mirror the type of communities that we have in the Global South, because those are different realities. Those are coming from different points of entry, but also our communities are in danger, unlike your communities. Your communities are not in danger. Ours are. So this thing about, this is why we insist that this is not an issue of the 1% versus the 99%, of the 80% versus the 20%. Is literally the Global North and the Global South, plus the many realities that are out there, including the capture of our elites. So this is very much sounding like dependency theory or whatever, but it's out there. So we need to read it now. What does that mean, for instance, in the context of the financialization of the economy, the digitalization of economy? Those are new challenges that are somewhere, that are also speculative economy that is not focalized in any place. But we know that multinational capitalism, the monopoly capital, are based mostly in the Global North. So there are realities that we need to tackle. And this is where the degrowthers start to fade out from what is their analysis, and then what is their action that they're having, and their invitation to us to say, okay, so this is our framework that we want to share with you. No, we have a different framework, but we very much want the growth for the Global North. And we very much want to transform and to stop the capture that these structures have in our territories. Sorry for taking so much.
No, that's perfectly fine, Amelia. Thank you for that. Akshay, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I was just wondering in this discussion, and even before that, how as a as an international, we need to also look inside as IDN and see if we are ready to purge people who are right wing, who are not into anti-imperialist value, who just want to do gardening in the name of environmentalism. You know, we need to, and I don't know what we can do as a Global South Circle to hold mirror to the network itself and see that these are the values we need to go ahead with. And if you don't want to go comply to these values, maybe this network is not the place for you. And I think that is important than just expanding the network. There should be degrowth inside the network as well, that if we have attracted some pro-imperialism or anti-rights groups or whatever, we should be ready to purge. And externally, I feel IDN as a network and the overall other degrowth organizations, as a campaigner, and I'm not an academic, I just do campaigning, I feel like we are not ready to get our hands dirty in this messy imperialist wars or colonization of the Global South. We need to see what is the risk appetite of the IDN network, and how much we are ready to get our hands dirty on the matters of human rights and other imperialist wars. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Akshay. That is very right. We are coming to the close of this session. Does anyone have any final reflections before we wrap up? Or I don't know how this would work logistically. Do you want to hang out a little more? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. What is the can we do that? Okay, Kanika is giving a thumbs up. Okay, we can do that. Was that a logistical thumbs up? Can we do that, or do people have to go?
I mean, from my end, it was like, yes, we can go ahead, but
okay.
Like
I know, because I feel like
too.
there's other things to be said as well, if in case anyone wants to contribute more. I mean, I had just moving away from this for like a second. I had a more like, I don't know, granular concern, which is just all of the different events and conferences, non-degrowth related ones that I've been to, which do broach the subject of degrowth. I can see that there's such a hunger to really understand degrowth. Like I can see people are switched on, but they're like dude, can you please fucking explain how this works? And I feel like a lot of the degrowth experts, academics, researchers, whoever's representing degrowth there, they're doing the opposite. They're kind of complicating it further. Like if someone's asking you about MMT, just explain it to them. Or I feel like ideally it should be explained like someone's a 5-year-old. One should not be getting into jargon at all. But then I feel like that's happening over and over again. So that's like a concern. And I feel like we won't even get started with the conversations that we are having right now if we don't elaborate on that, on the basics properly. So yeah, that kind of bothers me, aside from, you know, all of the other obvious stuff. But yeah, if anyone wants to chime in, also like please feel free to chime in with like really unrelated stuff as well. Yeah, Zamira, go ahead, and then Elsa.
I guess Elsa, you can go. Samira seems to have dropped off.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm here.
Okay. Oh,
hello.
yeah, go.
Back.
Sorry, I thought I was talking and yeah, I was on mute, I think. Yeah, so thank you, Sarah, so much for your intervention. And also I'm gonna wrap up on my end because I'll have to go. But before doing that, I wanted to step into something that has to do with the values of us as a community, and also the values of any movement that is willing to step into a better future, which is duality. Duality as a concept taken from the duality that started in the colonialist European mindset of separating men from nature, which also got us into all of this mess to begin with, from understanding that we are these creatures that are foreign to everything else, and that therefore we're here to rule the world, to also the dualism that exists within us as a concept of the me and you, or us and them. I feel that is crucial for the movements to come, and hopefully for us as a community in the IDN, not just as Global South, but as a whole, to remind ourselves that success in nature is not innate to the perception of individuality, but as a collective, and understanding that collective means all of us. So I want to put out there first the idea of what really drives life, which is love overall. And this love has lots to do with understanding that I am part of everything and everything is part of me. Therefore, constructing and building a community that is successful also has lots to do with bringing everyone to the conversation, and those conversations that are especially hard are the most needed. Therefore, for me, having people here from the global north wanting to bring their ideas and ready to listen and ready to learn is a huge step forward. And just making sure that we as a community move forward and take steps, common steps, is monumental. And I'm just thinking about the things that I was taking on the last COP. I was looking at the situation of indigenous people in the Amazonian rainforest, and I feel like what's been really powerful for them in at large, at scale success this last year was mainly putting aside their problem as their small little communities problem and making it a worldwide situation, and making us all understand that we're all part of this. So I want to put that out there, just to also thank everyone that is coming from the global north here ready to listen and ready to learn, and actively wanting to just keep themselves on the ground in very hard conversations, because it's true, in the global south we have lots of tensions, lots of harsh personal stories as well. And therefore, thank you for standing your ground, and welcome to this non-dual utopia that we can build between us to hopefully build a better community every year. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thanks, Zamira. I don't want to be ultra contrarian here, but also like I want to be. I don't think we are all in the same place, and I think that's a very important thing to note, which is exactly why we're here. I think because we don't all have the same yardstick, and what Amelia is saying in the chat is also extremely relevant. I think she's saying the same thing. She's saying that communities require differentiated action and not homogenizing everyone. And I think that's the most important thing. And yeah, I mean, there is love, but it's not about love. Yeah, so if anyone has any other contributions, we can go ahead. Elsa and Abhishek have raised their hands, so happy for them to go ahead.
Yeah, so I just came from this Nordic youth climate movement strategy kind of meetup, and I was really thinking that it was very interesting to see, and I've noticed this in many groups, that once you find the kind of modus operandi, or the goal, which is, for example, in Global North, to attack certain industries that are very harmful globally. So many, especially youth movements or so-called youth movements, just kind of double down on that one tactic or one focus. And I'm not saying it's not good, but I do think that even many people in those communities and groups that do that kind of action, it was visible that they really wanted to kind of think of an alternative world where those industries wouldn't exist, or things would be better. But I feel like all the discussion we could have had on economics or geopolitics, beyond stating our solidarities to groups that or communities that require it, we don't have, and I don't really know how to make the situation change. Like, once certain groups get into that, like, we have to take action mode, they don't have time to kind of build their common understanding of politics. And I think this is really, really problematic, especially in Europe, because if you don't really create your common understanding of politics and reflect, you're not going to be politically powerful and able to respond to what is going on in the world and be prefigurative. And I would also be interested in kind of thinking about how these communities where this reflection exists could kind of be more interwoven to communities of action and those people who are willing to put their bodies in the struggle, because not everyone has to do everything. But I think there is a huge disconnect between groups, and especially this kind of like campaign focus we have in Europe. I think it's very difficult to break out of if you're very used to that being the way of being an activist. So yeah, would be interesting to continue discussion, and then maybe also hear how to bring this, how to say, degrowth principles to actual political struggles, in a way that would allow movements that don't identify as degrowth movements to kind of identify themselves as being part of degrowth fights. Because I think this degrowth community is very much like an identity label, and it's preventing other groups from adopting degrowth principles in their action, maybe, or political vision. But yeah, check.
Abhishek, do you want to go? I think you're muted.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, I was muted. Sarah, I was just asking you if you want to elaborate on the comment you just put there before I go.
Do I want to elaborate? I think Amelia might elaborate better. And I'm happy to give her, she's more incisive than I am. So I think maybe she could elaborate on that. But like just very briefly, what I meant was that yes, there can be love, but this is not about love. This is about operation, and this is about deconstructing and dismantling these very violent systems. And you can dispatch it with the love, but it needs to be dispatched with that. Yeah, and there's yes, we could all be in a common fight, but this is, I think we shouldn't homogenize. Yeah. Aya, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so first I want to thank everyone for your contribution. It's Abhishek, do you have something to follow up with?
I can let you finish. Or are you closing the circle?
We're moving into like a different segment, but so please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. The point I wanted to make is actually very similar to what Sarah brought up just now. That decolonization from the global north perspective would be very different from decolonization of the way a global south person would think of it, especially the people on ground in the global south who are most affected by it. Because it's, and I think Zoha also brought this up earlier about it not being black and white. It's not a binary, and say in a place like India, for example, there is also a form of domestic colonization that happens all the time, and that is driven by things like religion, things like caste. And for the people on ground in India who face the brunt of this, decolonization is this huge cloud of multiple layers. It's not as simple as, a foreign power withdrawing. And I just wanted everyone to acknowledge that. It may look like from the global north perspective, it may look way more straightforward than it is from the global south perspective. And I know this is the case in many global south countries, probably all of them. So just want to bring that to everyone's attention and make sure that we know about that when we talk about degrowth and decolonization. Yeah.
Any final reflections?
If I may just add, I am probably not even the best person to make that point because I come from a very privileged social stratum of the Indian society. So, I mean, I don't know whether I don't know if this is a solvable problem for a gathering like this. Can we include the right voices and things like that? But I think the bare minimum we could do is to acknowledge that this sort of complexity exists. Yeah, thanks.
Amazing. So we're going to go into our final segment of the cafe, and Aya and Kanika will take over.
Yeah, so thank you so much for everyone for this discussion. And as part of the ending for this cafe, we wanted to also create a platform that's not just for academics, which has been brought up a lot in this conversation. So to end our gathering, we're going to be turning to poetry, a medium that has been long been a cornerstone of activism and liberation. And we hope through its rhythm, emotion, and raw honesty to ignite whatever we feel inside. And with that, I want to introduce Parneet, which she has already come on and introduced herself. So Parneet is the founder of Poetry for Planet, which is an international youth-led creative movement to empower and heal the climate community through the power of storytelling and poetry. She recently had the honor of performing during the high-level event at the UNSCCD, which is the desertification COP in Riyadh. And she's also the World Foods Forum official poet. And with that, I hand it over to Parneet.
Thank you so much, Aya, for having me, and I'm so glad to hear everything that has been going on in this, climate cafe. Also, following up on Abhishek's point, I am a marginalized person, so I think this completes the thing that you were asking for. So I wrote this poem that I'm going to be sharing today. I had the honor of writing this poem while I was there in Riyadh. I remember I was invited by Hindu, the amazing indigenous leader. She invited me to come up in Riyadh and perform there as a poet. And I was part of the first indigenous delegation to UNCCD in 31 years. And I scrapped the idea that I had originally, and I sat with the indigenous peoples, my brothers and sisters from 7 sociocultural regions present there. And for 3 days, I just sat and I talked to them and I listened to their wisdom, their philosophies and science. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is the product that we created together, our poem. So it took me 3 days, and I was there, and the very next day I performed it there in front of dignitaries. And it is a highly commemorative and historic moment in our struggles, and also in decolonizing these spaces, because our cultures are the bedrock of our societies, have always been storytelling. It has not been academia. If you look at it, if you look at the epics, if you look at the stories that run the world, it has always been storytelling. So I'm very happy to share this poem that I think is something very divine and very historic. Where's the heart of humanity? Here in the room with us. Where's the soul of humanity? Here in the room with us. Where's the mind of humanity? Here in the room with us. Look over to your left and right. Do you see the roots of humanity? We are the grandchildren of 7 sisters chased by colonialism, capitalism, and corruption. But today, we unite again, triumphant, jubilant, resilient, as guardians of our Mother Earth and as makers of history, to rekindle the memory of the oldest love song that reverberated in the halls of humanity. So I implore you to place your hand over your heart and listen closer to the oldest songline known to humanity, your heartbeat. Mitakuye Oyasin, we are all connected as our hearts beat in unison. Hence, when the widowed Sahara weeps, her wails echo all across the Atlantic as she finds a dusty burial in Burican, the land of Taino, which chokes away on the slow death of her lover. But what is land? Asked the Pokut, nestling in Lake Baringo. We don't have a word for land. To us, it is ripe with life. As our very first storyteller, birthing tales after tales as she blesses us with another batch of crops. But will there be another harvest? So I look up to the Maasai, who study the intestines of the goat to confirm the blessings of rain gods for yet another year. Further away in the thick rainforests of Amazon, I hear the sacred voice of my dear brother, beckoning the world to realize that time is not cold, time is water, the elixir of humanity, the child of Mother Earth and Father Sky, as the Maoris would say. So the Chukchis in the Arctic borrow just enough from Gaia, not too much, not too little, while their neighbors in Russia let life be guided by reindeer's hunch for centuries on end, an eco-tradition of trust and harmony. Perhaps I would trust a reindeer more than a man, and not too far away from Yucca gears, the Selkups guard their mother, the moose, just as they would protect the sacred Karak in Noongar. From the Pacific to Atlantic, we wade to the brink of a golden dawn under the Mayan sun. The Bororo lend an ear to the divine songs of the wind and birds to confirm the pulse of the day, to honor our Namkathe, our Mother Earth. From Mi'kmaq to Creek, they play the fire song of revival, and as a phoenix, we witness the rebirth of a new forest, the forest of hope for humanity. Welcome to the era of indigenous revival. Walk with us into the future in the footsteps of our ancestors to thunder into the books of history after 31 years as rightful protectors of Mother Earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parneet, for touching our hearts with your words. I'll hand over to Kanika to close us off for the evening.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was such a perfect ending to this year. And one thing is clear, that we should host more of these, because the engagement in this one has been through the roof, more than anything we've hosted previously. Thank you to everybody who spoke and shared their reflections. There's a lot more to discuss. There are so many open threads still, and we hope we can tackle them in our future sessions. And thanks to everybody who listened, because that is also equally important. And I wish you very happy holidays, a happy new year, and I hope you have a great time. And I'll see you next year.
Thank you for organizing this call. Happy
you.
holidays to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice.
Nice seeing you.
Nice. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, folks. Happy holidays.
Abrazos, huge hugs.
Abrazos.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Can we leave? Like, do we have all the messages copied?
My laptop died. Can someone just take the copy of the last few messages? I've taken most. This was so great, guys.
This one was great. Can you stop the recording, Aya?
Yeah, I think. Elsa, we're closing the meeting now.